And Rolling Stone is ranking the top 50 video games of all time, from the arcade, Game Boy, Sega Genesis, to the PC and the latest consoles. Super Mario World cracked the top 5, earning the 4th spot. Grand Theft Auto 5 is ranked 3rd. Tetris came in 2nd, but the top-ranked video game of all time, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Let's bring in Rolling Stone senior gaming editor Christopher Cruz and Micro Center News editor-in-chief Dan Ackerman, author of The Tetris Effect, for more. Thank you both for coming on. Chris, let's start with these top picks. What puts Zelda at number 1?
Oh, it was kind of a unanimous decision, honestly. We started out the conversation internally with the Rolling Stone writers, and it kind of floated to the top naturally. And once we opened it up to other journalists and content creators and people in the industry, it kind of was the only choice. I feel like everybody had this in their top 5, and most of them had it in their top 1. But it's just a game that people love, across demographics, and it's a kind of game that is really defining of its generation.
My vote was for Tetris, and I'm actually pretty impressed with how my vote ranked there. Just at number 2, I was pretty close. What do you make of the rest of the top 5 here?
I love all of these games. I think everybody kind of does, right? Tetris is a game that has existed for, 40 years, and it's still endlessly playable. Super Mario 2 is a game that people, have loved for generations. People are still playing it on modern consoles. Some people have their old consoles plugged in. They're still playing it. And then something like Grand Theft Auto is just kind of one of the biggest pieces of media ever, right? Beyond video games. It's kind of a cultural phenomenon.
Dan, some other highlights here. Fortnite came in at 45, Pokemon Gold, Silver Share, the 37th spot. Minecraft comes in at 28th. Do you agree with these rankings overall? And do you think there were any major snubs here?
That's the fun thing about a list like this, is that there's room for a lot of different types of games and a lot of genres. And I agree with you personally that I think Tetris is probably long-term the number 1, just in terms of being influential and in terms of being the game that non-gamers play, giving it such a wider audience. That said, looking at the list, I would have liked to see Super Mario 64 on there, which is really influential in terms of creating the concept of 3D worlds for people to interact with. I think Roblox is a game that is super popular especially with kids. It's very influential. People build whole new game worlds out of it. It's more of a construction kit than just strictly a game. Maybe something classic like EverQuest or Second Life to give a nod to those early days of that massively multiplayer online arena. But when you have a list of 50, you have room for just about all the favorites. And I think a lot of them were in there, and it's a really fun list to go through.
I also need to cast a vote for Mario Kart, because everybody can play Mario Kart. It's a super fun group game, but nobody asked me, so let's move on. Chris, these games span several decades. So how hard is this to do? How do you compare Tetris to something like Fortnite or Grand Theft Auto? And how big of a role does nostalgia play here?
That's a really good question, because it was really hard to pare down to just 50, right? I think when we begin the conversation, it starts in the hundreds and then going down from there. What we tried to do was try to limit each franchise to just 2 entries, just to be fair. Otherwise, Mario could dominate the list with 15 entries, and that doesn't seem representative of the kind of breadth and depth of the gaming audience. We tried to also think about whether a game is still really fun to play. And sometimes sequels tend to, be a little bit more fine-tuned and a little bit more refined. So, like for Super Mario World, we felt that was kind of the one that hit the sweet spot that still feels really good to play, but also introduced a lot of things that are, kind of innovative and impacted the industry.
So, Dan, what games would you recommend? You talked about Tetris being a game even non-gamers play. So what's your recommendation for people who are either new to gaming or someone who hasn't played since the Tetris days, asking for a friend?
There's actually a great one right now that is on a bunch of different platforms that's super easy to play, keys off of poker cards, which makes it very easy to understand. It's called Balatro, and you can play it on your phone. You can play it on a computer. It's actually part of an Apple Arcade's program, so you can get it on your iPhone if you have an Apple Arcade subscription. And people find it incredibly addictive, and you're creating poker hands, but there's all kinds of wild cards and jokers, and you just want to get the most, powerful hand possible, and it's just, you cannot stop playing it. So that's my pick it up and play. If you're not a gamer, play Balatro. That's with a B.
Balatro. Okay, taking notes on that. Christopher Cruz, Dan Ackerman, thank you both. Fun chat.